Hey up everybody, my name's Joshua Morrison, director of Johnny Moz's Lessons in Confidence, and today I want to talk a little bit about content and how there's more considered content and less considered content. You know, there's various, let's use YouTubers, we're just going to call them YouTubers for the sake of this, but this counts all sort of forms of media, content, art, right? But we're going to just stick with YouTubers for now for the sake of this video. So you've got more considered YouTubers, people who make, say, like, you know, scripted video essays or little documentaries and stuff, where they go out and interview people, or they go to various locations and stuff like that. And then you have less considered things, which is kind of what I'm doing at the moment, right? Where the videos are quite short, simple, easy, straight to the point, digestible, basic, right? And I think there's plenty of room for both. I don't think that, you know, we should all be striving towards making the most considered, holistic piece of art imaginable, because say that we all did that, right? Say that everyone put, you know, their most considered foot forwards and just made the most, you know, highly polished piece of entertainment that you could possibly make, right? And the world was just filled with highly polished quality entertainment, right? Would we watch all of it, or would it just be a bit overwhelming? Because do you know what, at the moment, right now, what I just said is already the case, right? There is so much stuff out there. There is so much, like, you know, amazing masterpiece quality stuff out there, right? That I'm meant to sit and watch all of it. How am I supposed to get through it all? There's films out there that I've not watched yet. There's loads of grand films that I've not seen. I've not seen Ben-Hur. I've seen Lawrence Arabia, but I've not seen Ben-Hur, right? And then there's loads more, right? Gone with the Wind. I've seen the first half of Gone with the Wind, but I've never seen the second half because it's such a long film that I fell asleep while I was watching it and I just never got around to finishing it. I need to finish that, right? But think of it like this. So I was born in 1999. I'm currently 25, right? So I was conscious part of the, you know, the culture, the zeitgeist since probably around 2013, right? Where you're aware of the culture around you to a decent level, right? So films that come out from 2013 onwards, I'm pretty aware of them. I'm pretty up to speed, right? So say then you've got someone like, I don't know, my dad, who was born, you know, in 1968, right? So he might have become like aware of the culture around him in, say, 1981, right? So he's got about nearly 30 years on me, right? In terms of being aware and up to date, right? Because there were less films out there. There was less stuff. There were less TV series to watch, to be informed about, right? That he didn't need to worry so much, right? And then take maybe his dad, right? Who was born in, say, like 1958, right? Sorry, what? No, 1930, right? And he became aware of the cultural zeitgeist in around maybe 1943, right? So now he only has to worry about films from 1943 backwards in terms of keeping up. I've got an extra 70 years that I need to sift through. Do you see my point? Because I'm so much younger, I'm at a disadvantage in terms of there is so much more stuff to engage with. How am I supposed to engage with all of it? How am I supposed to have seen every single film, right? It would have been easier for, say, my granddad, who was born 70 years before me, compared to, say, my future child, who, let's say he was born in, I don't know, 2037, right? So he becomes aware of the cultural zeitgeist in 2050, right? Now, he's got an extra 110 years just to catch up with where my granddad was, right? And it goes on and on and on and on, right? So we're adding more and more masterpieces to the masterpiece fucking pile. The masterpiece pile is just this leaning fucking tower that goes right into the sky. And we're supposed to keep up to date with it. We're supposed to have seen most of that, right? So we can have conversations and stuff. Because most conversations are kind of, hey, have you seen, I don't know, Ghostbusters? Yeah, that was awesome. And then, you know, now they've seen Ghostbusters, you can talk about it, right? There's stuff to discuss, or maybe in-jokes that you can go into, right? This is just the most boiled down, basic, you know, watershed conversation, just for the sake of example, right? But say, I go, oh, have you seen Ghostbusters? They go, no. All I can say to that is, oh, you should, it's really good, right? Okay, I will, great. Not much you can do with that, right? So the more masterpieces that come out, the less everyone is going to be able to watch them all, because the more masterpieces there are, the more expectation to watch more things that there are, the less time everyone has to watch all this stuff, the less everyone watches this stuff, the more disconnected we all become, because we're all sitting in our own little worlds, right? There's cultures out there on the internet that I have no fucking idea about. Furries, I don't know anything about them. I don't know, what else is there? Anime, I've not watched an anime for about 15 years, right? Okay, 10 years, right? I don't know what's going on with anime now. I barely knew what was going on with it back then. It's an alien world to me now, right? And then there's so many of these things. There's Bollywood, there's Nollywood, there's so much stuff out there. And then there's music. The amount of music that exists, right? The amount of different trends that there are, that people, like anyone that lived through the 80s knows most of the music that came out in the 80s, like popular stuff, right? They know like A Flock of Seagulls and Duran Duran and all this stuff. I've not listened to hardly any of it. You know, I've not listened to their greatest hits. I've not listened to the main music videos or anything like that. I've not seen any of it or listened to any of it because, look, I've listened to bits, you know, at the pub and stuff when it's come on, but I don't like Duran Duran particularly. But I shouldn't have to like Duran Duran to have heard a couple Duran Duran songs so that I can occasionally talk about Duran Duran. Because if I want to say I don't like Duran Duran, I'll go, oh, what have you listened to? And I'll go, I don't know. I can't name a single Duran Duran song, right? Or I can name a couple Flock of Seagulls songs, they're a bit better, right? But do you get my point? Is that the further that time goes on, right, the more stuff that gets put out into the world, right, the more that there is to watch because there is more stuff being put out into the world, and the more stuff that there is to watch, the more choice that we have, the more paralysis of choice kind of comes around, and the less people end up watching, or the less percentage of the overall that people can watch. Because even, you know, say my granddad is born in 1938, right? He isn't going to be able to have watched every single thing that came before, right? It's not like he would have, right? But he maybe could have watched, say, 0.1%, right? Then by the time he gets to my dad, that becomes 0.001%, right? Because there's just that much more stuff. Because, you know, after 1940, right, films probably got made on a more regular basis. Probably more films came out because camera technology was becoming a little bit more accessible. And, you know, sure, independent cinema didn't fully exist, but, you know, stuff like French New Wave and stuff like that, German Expressionism, I think that was a little bit earlier. You know, those kind of things came around. There were all these different movements that were kind of coming out. And obviously there were movements before that, but now there's like way more, right? And then you get to, say, me, who has to keep up with all of the 70s, all of the 80s, all of the 90s, all of the 2000s, right? And I'm supposed to have kept up with all of that, right? And then I'm expecting my future son or daughter, right, to keep up with all the 2010s, the 20s, the 30s and the 40s, and the 70s, 80s, 90s and the 2000s, right? And I'm expecting them to just do that. How are they supposed to do that? I don't have a clue. I don't know how they could possibly do that unless you were sat there with like the Clockwork Orange on your eyes, right? Just blasting it into your face as all of this, you know, masterpiece, you know, piece of the culture as possible, right? You have to blast them all into your face, right? And to understand what I'm talking about there, you need to have at least seen or understood that bit in A Clockwork Orange where his eyes are like that. You need to have understood that that was a part in a film that you may or may not have watched, right? And the more time that goes on, the more of those little moments will come around, the more references exist, and the more references that we'll need to understand. Like Star Wars, for instance. The only reason that I bothered watching fucking Star Wars is because there's so many references out there. There's like oh, Luke, I am your father, and it's like, oh no, he actually said, no, I am your father. Who gives a shit what he said either way, to be honest? But there's so many little references like that, and in-jokes, and you know, you need to have seen Star Wars, essentially, to be able to get by in some conversation sometimes. So I only watched the Star Wars movies so that I could understand these references, right? To be honest, Star Wars 1, 2 and 3, Empire Strikes Back and the other one, they're not very good. Star Wars 1 is really good, but Empire Strikes Back and the Jedi one, I just didn't like them very much. The whole two-part, it felt like The Matrix. You know how there's The Matrix 1, that's really good, and then there's Matrix 2 and 3, which are kind of made together to kind of fill out this trilogy that didn't need to exist. That's kind of what it feels like. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that I feel like we're just oversaturating the market with masterpieces, right? And the more masterpieces that we saturate the market with, and the more cultural touchstones that they become, right? Obviously, older touchstones get forgotten to time, but we're replacing them faster than they go away, right? Because we're making more and more and more media, forms of media content art now than we were before. And that's only going to increase in momentum as time goes on. So what are we going to do? How are we going to solve that issue, right? We need to come up with some sort of way of figuring that out, because eventually it's going to get to kids that are born in the year 2099, right? They're going to need to have kept up with like 150 years worth of culture, and we're supposed to just be fine with that. They're going to be so like confused. Why don't we have classes about this stuff? Culture class or something like that. You know, I don't know. That's my idea, thesis, whatever, right? Let me know your thoughts on it, because I don't actually fully know the core of the point that I'm making here, but I would like to know what you think of it. Do you agree? Do you disagree? why do you agree or disagree? And yeah, enjoy this little background here and have a good rest of the day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.